Thank you, Noel. And it's good to be here. And I'd like to welcome everybody who's joined us today and just acknowledge that it is a little strange to be meeting in this online way, and yet here we are. It's also magical how we can do this. There's a meeting, beyond meeting anyway. So first I'd like to just start by closing our eyes and taking a few moments to feel, to sense whatever is here. To acknowledge the breath just the way it is. Noticing the sensations as they are right now. Perhaps we can scan the body, just feeling whatever is here. We can start with our head, our face, we hold a lot of tension in our face usually, in our neck and our shoulders, our arms, hands. And again, noticing the breath coming in and out of the chest. The belly. The pelvis, the bum sitting on the chair. Legs. Coming all the way down to your feet, touching the ground. This whole body. Experienced, felt. And if there are any feelings or emotions, they're included too. And any thoughts. Everything's included just the way it is right now. Even if thought says, I don't like this, or I don't want this, or if only I was in some perfect state, then this wouldn't be here. We can just notice all those thoughts. They're welcome. And at the same time, they don't mean anything. They're all just part of the experience. Being experienced right now. Part of the everything in nothing. whatever is arising right now. Just the way it is for you, in your direct experience. So as we notice the experience right now, there is this noticing, the knowing of this experience. This is how you know it's here. The awareness of it all, the seeing. This is what I call your true nature, or who you are. This simply notices whatever is here, without preference or opinion. It includes everything unconditionally. Right now. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the screen and the image on the screen, to the visual experience that is very compelling, as if there is a whole world outside of you, out there. And this compelling experience is part of the game that we play in this strange life. You are that seeing of it all, that knowing, and you are the experience in it. You are the play of life. It is such a paradox. And it doesn't make sense for the thinking. The thinking likes to land on one side or the other of the paradox. It likes to come to a conclusion. It likes to have a certain opinion, a certain idea, a certain sense of, this is who I am. This is the ground. This is what I know. So usually it will either land on the side of the personal, that I am me, I'm limited to in here, located, I'm my name, my story, my body. Or if you've been on the spiritual search, trying to escape the personal, then the thinking wants to land on the other side. The awareness, the nothingness, the emptiness. And of course, this is the truth. You are that awareness, that emptiness. But when thought lands there, when thought makes a concept out of it, it creates a new identity, albeit a more spiritual and non-dual identity. And yet it's still a sneaky, separate me playing out as a way of protecting, perhaps, a way of avoiding the mess of being human, the mess of the personal. And that can be very understandable that we do that, because if your personal life has been painful, uncomfortable, if there's been a lot of painful longing to be free from any prisons of your personal life, or what feels like a prison, when you finally wake up to the truth of who you are, when you finally see, I'm not what I think, I'm not limited to my story and my name, then there's a wanting to land there and stay there forever. Thought wants to grasp hold of it and say, yes, this is me. And it wants to push away anything that might disturb that, anything that might bring you down to the ground again, because it can be very sweet to float in that, in the bliss of who you are, of acknowledging who you are. But inevitably, life, in one way or another, does tend to bring us all crashing down to the ground again, whether we like it or not. And it's most likely not very comfortable. And perhaps at first we kick and scream because we don't want it. We want to stay out there, up there, untouched by it all. But perhaps there's a certain event that happens in your life, some tragedy or a loss, perhaps more and more over some time. Gradually, there's a seeing that your thinking doesn't have all the answers. And eventually you have to see that even the thinking that you are awareness, even the non-dual thinking is still thinking. And you can't hide there anymore. And you have to start to face the human stuff that's here. And at first it can feel like you're going to lose the recognition, what you've finally found and discovered. That's often why we are really trying to avoid the human mess, because we're afraid that we're going to lose what we've finally found, that we're going to somehow go to sleep again into the personal stuff. But once you've recognized the truth of who you are, once you've seen that thought isn't true, that whatever thought says about who you are is not actually who you are, you can't not see that. You can't not know that. Of course, thought can come up with all kinds of stories. But if your longing for the truth is strong, and it most likely is if you are watching this, or if you've recognized that the thinking isn't what you thought it was, if you're willing to keep seeing that the thinking is not true, then this can never be lost. Then all the feelings, sensations, thoughts, all the dramas of your human experience can be here. And there's always a knowing that nothing is really touched. You are life itself, aware of it all. And yet simultaneously, you are feeling, sensing, experiencing, being this person with this body, just the way it is, living this life in this timeline with the ups and downs and ins and outs of this person, embracing this person, getting to know this person, falling in love with this person, in fact. Knowing that this person is, in fact, life itself, expressing itself as this human. That this person, this human, is a magical expression in each moment, an alive expression, just the way it is. And at the same time, knowing that your true nature is not located and limited to this human, then this human actually is free to play, to express herself, himself, to play any role, to be any kind of person, to finally live the freedom that you've been longing to live. So there's a lot of lived freedom when you embrace the human. And that's often what we're longing for. You know, I know in my personal experience with that, I always had a deep longing to wake up to the truth of who I am. And I didn't even know what that meant, really. It was just this deep longing. And I had to follow that longing no matter what, even if it took me into all kinds of painful areas of life. There was a longing to know who I am, but also there was a longing to live that, because I was very shy, I was very insecure, and that played out in all kinds of ways in different areas of my life. And in recognizing my true nature as life itself, it's not that all those insecurities and beliefs about myself just disappeared just like that. It's that I recognized that I'm not limited to those beliefs about myself, to those identities that were there. That who I am is aware of them. And already this gives a lot of freedom, but the human still plays out all that stuff, all that old conditioning. So then the discovering how this is lived more and more, this is in fact an endless unraveling, an endless seeing, an endless experiencing. This sense of contraction, for example, this story of me feeling, sensing it all, knowing that that too is included in who I am, and yet it doesn't mean anything about who I am. And that's really how this is lived, living the paradox of including it all, And at the same time, knowing that it doesn't mean anything about who I am. And it's really walking on that razor's edge. Because the thinking, again, it wants to land on one side or the other. It either wants to make a big drama about me and a big poor me story or all kinds of stories of me. It wants to take it all very seriously and personally. Or it wants to flip to the other side and dismiss it all. But when you don't land on either side, you just stay in the middle. And even the middle isn't some kind of landing place. Because of course the thinking can be very clever and turn even what I'm saying into some new belief system or attitude or way of living from now on. But it's more of a resonating, a sense that who I am is always known. It doesn't need to be held onto by the thinking. It's not something that the thinking can grasp hold of. So even if you know all the non-dual concepts and you can, recite all the books perfectly, it still doesn't mean that this is actually recognized. And how do you know if it's recognized? Well, you don't. There's no thinking confirmation that will ever be able to say, right, now I've got it. And that's one of the most frustrating things about this. You're never going to arrive at a point where it's all done. Because this is an endless losing, in fact. And I would never want to arrive at any end point. Because first of all, that would only be the thinking saying, I know. And that would never be true. Because in fact, it's always about the thinking saying, I don't know. That's the best that the thinking can do, actually. Is say, it's not up to me to know. But also this endless unraveling is a beautiful journey. It's not always fun. It's not always easy. It has its big challenges for sure. But it's an opening to life in whatever is here. So I'm open for if people want to ask questions or have some kind of dialogue, that would be great.
Okay, great. Yeah, a question came in for you.
Mm-hmm.
So Sid asks, I'm confused by the idea of embodiment. I feel embodied as consciousness, presence, awareness. Can you speak in that context, the idea of embodiment in this body and how to think about it? Thanks.
Yeah, well, that's in fact what I've been speaking about. I didn't use the word embodiment, but that's, yeah, exactly what it is, really. That living paradox of knowing who you are and at the same time living as this human. And it's not really something to think about or to try to do. It's, the way I like to kind of connect into that is with the longing. If you go back to what drew you to the spiritual path in the first place, that original longing, if you can really take some time to feel into that, perhaps to remember the situation or the feelings that you had then, to really kind of feel that again. And to know that that same longing is still what you can live from. And it's not a longing for one day when I'll arrive. It's not when I've reached some perfect state. In fact, the longing is that endless unraveling. It's a love of truth. It's living with a love of truth in everything, in every moment. And that's what can actually lead you into more and more embodiment. Because you're in love with truth more than living the story of me, living or getting something for me. You're willing to risk losing it all for me for the sake of truth, no matter what that is or where that will take you. So when it comes to some conditioning playing out in your experience, acknowledging that is included, feeling the sensation that comes with it, the emotion, or usually there's a physical sensation, taking some time to feel into that. And also the thought story, that it's all included, nothing is pushed away or excluded in some way. But usually we are taking the thought story to be the truth about the situation or what's happening, or about me. So seeing that the thinking has no more value or less value than anything else. It means that actually then we can include the sensation and see that this sensation is here now. And at the same time, it doesn't mean what the thinking is saying that it means. So this, in my experience, actually is more and more of a breaking, a cracking somehow. And it can actually feel like a kind of endless heartbreak somehow. That doesn't sound very great. Doesn't sound very blissful or something. But it's not necessarily always blissful. It's coming more and more alive. So there's feeling more, feeling the heartbreak of life more and more, letting life in, allowing yourself to be touched by everything and anything.
Wonderful, thank you. And then there's a follow-up, but you touched on it a little bit, I believe, but it's how to protect from awakening being used as a spiritual bypass away from touching emotional discomfort in the body.
Yeah. Well, it's about being honest with yourself. I think, we all know really when we're using it in that way. And maybe we don't want to know. Maybe we're pretending that no, I know already, and actually secretly we're still using it in that way. And at the same time, we also forgive ourselves because it plays out like that as long as it does. And as I said before, at a certain point, there can be a certain event that snaps us out of that means that we can't go on playing the spiritual bypass anymore. And it can be like a big slap in the face, wake-up call. But then also there can be a lot of gratitude for that, even if it's painful, a painful slap in the face. It's like, oh, thank you, life, for waking me up out of this again. I had landed in something. And life goes, yeah, you wanted the truth, here it is.
Yeah, then it's just gratitude for that experience to happen because
yeah,
where it comes. Thank you. So Jorge says, Mani, loving your talk. How would you describe the place where all the sense perception registered is registered or known? And is that the place that your entire life registers from, and which you express it?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah. So I think I'll post it up on, but basically,
Oh yes, I can see it.
Describing the place where all the sense perception comes from, and then it sounds as if they're asking, is that the place where your entire life registers from always? I think there's a common secret question. It's like, are you always like this?
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if I'm reading it incorrectly, but basically sense perception, describe the place where all the sense perception is registered and known, and then after that description, is that where I guess in your experience, where your entire life registers from?
Yeah, I guess is the question about me personally or about generally, and that's also I mean, it's the same thing really, but if it's that question that many people ask about a teacher, then when they put a teacher's experience somehow up on a pedestal, somehow different to their own, well, I'm certainly not going to reinforce that idea that my experience is any different to yours or anybody else's. Well, I mean, on one hand, of course, my experience is unique, just the way it is, as is yours. But the knowing of it is the same. There's no separation, in fact, between that I am and that you are. And in fact, I register you and your question in me, as do you. And yes, everything is always lived in that way. It may not always be thought about or remembered mentally. And that's often a confusion for many people, that somehow there needs to be a certain kind of experience permanently that is kind of always remembered. And because this is nothing to do with the thinking, it's not something that the thinking can remember. And at the same time, it's not something that the thinking can forget, which is very freeing. That it's got nothing to do with the thinking. It doesn't have to try to remember anything.
Yeah, that's great. When you were talking earlier, I kept getting this sense of a returning. So we're in the world through programming and conditioning, thinking that life is happening to us, and there's some element of thinking, ego, mind, whatever you want to call it, that wants something else, something other, whether that's awakening, or it wants the drama and doesn't want anything to do with any of this nonsense. But then I think that what is resonating with me with what you're saying is that it ends up being an invitation back to the human experience, back to life and living it, but changed and unchanged in many ways.
Yes, absolutely. Everything's an invitation.
True.
Yeah. That's actually what I mean by that love of the truth, that everything becomes an invitation to know myself like this and like that and like this and like that.
So another question. So I'm sure this happens in your talks all the time. You'll say something, and then there might be another personhood question. It comes up. Well, what's it like for you? And then you say, well, there's not a me. That's what the understanding is. And they go, yeah, but what's it like? So this is in a similar vein. But it's upon waking up first thing in the morning, are you automatically there? Or does it take you a moment to find that space?
So I think this question is also based on a fundamental misunderstanding that that this recognition is a particular experience. You know, it's not any kind of experience, and that's really something to grasp. I mean, it's impossible to grasp that for the thinking. You know, it's correct. Yeah, but is it that? And the thinking uses also imagination. I mean, we try to imagine what it would be like, or what it's like for someone who's awakened. And then, of course, if we have an experience of some kind, we might be comparing it to our imagination of what it might be like for an awakened teacher, or master, or whatever. And of course, it's got nothing to do with the imagination either. So, yeah, I know it's frustrating, and that's where these questions come from, trying to understand it, trying to know it. But what we're actually talking about is nothing. You know, I mean, it's not an experience that I wake up with in the morning. It's not any kind of experience. It's, you know, I wake up in the morning with that experience, whatever it is. It's usually my son saying, "Mama, wake up, get up." So it's not particularly spiritual or something. I have a 5-year-old, so yeah, I very rarely wake up with some kind of spiritual experience. And yeah, you know, it's the knowing of it all. So it's the knowing of every experience. So that's really the bottom line. And I know it's not very satisfactory as an answer, but that's how it is. And actually, it's perfect that you feel some frustration at this answer.
Mm-hmm. You got an amazing thank you for the response, so I think it was satisfactory.
Okay.
But yeah, that makes sense. It's okay if frustrations are arising in this. The thinking wants it to be something else, never satisfied with the results there. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
All right, let me look through another question here real fast. So earlier we saw a talk, and there was a great quote. I'd love to get your comment on it, but it's that which is awake has always been awake. Can you respond to that?
Not much more to say, really.
It's pretty potent. Yeah. See if we can extract a little more truth nectar out of it.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's again that paradox that, you know, we're longing to wake up, and yet that has always been awake, and so there's not a waking up that happens, and yet the paradox is that the person wakes up to see that I'm not limited to being this person. And so that is the awakening, the seeing that I'm not this separate me. And then actually that's when the words, those very potent words of knowing that has always been awake, is actually known rather than just being words. All those beautiful spiritual concepts jump from being concepts to being actually recognized beyond the words. And then you can see that and read that and hear that everywhere. It's not just in special non-dual books or non-dual talks or something. Then you see the awakeness everywhere, in everything.
Thank you for that. So you talk about the living with the pain of feeling separate and alone. I want to talk a little bit about that that aspect of loneliness, because there might be some that are watching or that will watch later that are feeling alone, and there are many stories of waking up and not having anyone to talk to about this or that aloneness. And maybe the loneliness is what created the suffering to want to be a hardcore seeker in the first place. Can you speak a little bit about the loneliness either prior to or after? I guess we have to use air quotes in that a little bit, and even maybe the suffering that arises with those feelings of loneliness.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody can relate to loneliness at some time in their lives, or maybe often. And it's heartbreaking, it's painful. And there can be a longing for connection, longing to be with the other, as if the other will make it all better, will make my loneliness go away. As if there's a missing piece here, longing to be filled by the other. And then it can be that you meet the other, or you come together, whether it's a romantic or just a friendship, or just that you feel temporarily less alone, or less lonely. But the frustrating and annoying thing about that is that the other is not always there, or they don't always fulfill that missing piece, and they're not always perfect as you want them to be. They do their own thing, they have their own lives, or they just don't fit into your idea about how they should be. So I know in my experience in the past that I've been the most lonely at times when I've been with somebody. In fact, it highlights the fact that it's not actually about being with someone. It's not actually about being alone or with, it's a realization in yourself actually that the other can never satisfy that wanting, that longing. It can never, that the other can never fill that missing, that gaping hole, that sense of something wrong with me or something missing here. And in fact, nothing can fill that. It can also be that we project it onto our work. If I one day achieve this or that, or we project it onto the spiritual path, that one day when I wake up, then I'll never feel lonely, or I'll always feel that sense of wholeness all the time. But sorry to disappoint you, that it doesn't work that way. Well, I'm not sorry, actually. Actually, it's not about finding something to fill that gap. It's about coming to terms with it, or coming full circle back to that, to feel it, to fall into that gap yourself. And that's the embracing your own loneliness. In other words, embracing the little child that's here, as like an adult. That actually who you really are, your true nature, is, you could say, is the adult here in this analogy. And there's an embracing of the little child that's scared or lost or lonely or in pain or wanting, missing. And that embracing happens in a feeling, sensing, staying with, not projecting it out there. You know, or even if there is a projecting out there, even that you stay with. You're feeling that, feeling the pain of that, because that is terribly painful. The waiting for the perfect one day. It's excruciatingly painful. And just stopping and feeling the pain of that. Then actually that's the end of loneliness, because you have finally turned around and met yourself. Instead of waiting for one day when someone else will meet you, which of course never really comes permanently, you turn around and you actually say, okay, no one's going to meet me in the way that I truly long to be met. Only I can meet myself in that way. And then of meeting this human, of falling in love with this human, just the way he or she is. And you can actually practice that by looking in the mirror, and literally looking into your own eyes in the mirror for a while. It can feel at first a bit scary, or you get shy of yourself, which is crazy, isn't it? To get shy of yourself, you know. Or maybe you have thoughts that, you know, am I being too vain or something? Not supposed to look at yourself in the mirror for too long. Or you start to see all the problems with your face. But just stay there and just stay with yourself, meeting yourself in the way that you long for a lover to meet you. And then watch what comes up, because all kinds of stuff can come up, because finally you're being met. So then, yeah, all the children come up to be met.
Beautiful. Thank you. I have another question, but when you were talking, I was thinking of relationships. Relationship ends up being a big topic. There's this seemingly an expectation that awakening will fix everything, and it seems that oftentimes things can get way more sticky afterwards. You know, you realize I don't have this wholeness that I was looking for isn't found in this other person, it's found with me, but then there's a life with this other person that has a different set of expectations. So this question is, can you talk about exhaustion and how it can draw the mind into lock experience, into a sense of never-ending tiredness? You want me to read that one again?
Yes, please.
Yeah, right.
You saw my face going a bit blank.
Oh no, I just sort of I had to look again and be like, okay, let's see if I'm saying it with the right inflection. Can you talk about exhaustion?
Exhaustion, yes.
And how it can draw the mind into lock experience in a sense of never-ending tiredness.
Okay, because we were just talking about relationships, so then
sorry, that was my
was
me interjecting with a comment
subject.
on something else. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no problem.
My bad.
No problem. Yeah. Okay, so exhaustion, or in fact any experience, but I get that obviously this is about exhaustion for you, for this person who's asked the question, that we can start to lock onto any experience and say, well, this is now my experience, this is me now, as if this is going to happen again and again and again, and this is like an addiction. You know, we can even get addicted to experiences that are unpleasant, or painful or uncomfortable. Perhaps it's giving us something, and that would be something to look at. You know, what do I get out of the identity of being someone who's always exhausted? And does that give me something? And maybe your first response might be, no, of course not. You know, I don't want to be exhausted all the time. But the identity, without actually having a live dialogue with you, I can't presume to know how it is for you, but it can be that the identity gives you some kind of special me story, as if there's something wrong with me, so it makes me special in some way. Because without that special story of I'm always exhausted, then who would you be? You'd have to really acknowledge that I'm nothing, I'm no one, I'm just exhausted now. Who knows if I'll ever be exhausted again?
Very good. And I realized that since I didn't separate the questions, I was not implying that being in a relationship is exhausting. It can be work. So another
depends
question.
On the relationship.
That's true. That's true. And sometimes those really painful and exhausting ones deliver beautiful lessons. So, and you got to thank you. That helps with that answer. So I know there can be a lot of people are like, what? Some people will say, I don't give prescriptions. It's just descriptions here. And yet you can understand and see that that a lot of people just want to know, what should I do, or what could I do, and so I wanted to present that question to you, because I know that that even when some people don't prefer not to respond in some way, I know that that's a question that comes up for people. So
sure, yeah, and I totally understand that there is that question. I mean, really, as we were saying before, that frustration that comes in wanting to do and being told that there's nothing to do, and feeling that frustration, that is exactly what you need to be doing. In a way, just staying with that frustration or whatever else gets touched can be also grief, as more and more is lost, more and more of who you thought you were, or what you thought was real and true. Staying with whatever is here for you, staying absolutely loyal to that. Absolutely loyal to whatever is coming up for you. And if there are thoughts, if there are questions, then you must ask them. And if there is a sense that I must go and do that, or follow that teacher, or go to that retreat, or whatever it is, join this conference, then you must follow that. You must dive completely into it, and let it take you wherever it takes you, for as long as it takes, because it is also about getting exhausted. You must exhaust yourself, and so in a way you could say that there's everything to do. You do everything that you could possibly do. Go for it. Don't hold back. Don't just sit at home and hear, oh, there's nothing to do, and kind of nothing to do, or go into some mental masturbation about it. Go, live courageously, jump into it, take a risk. This is about waking up. So you have to be willing to jump into something and risk looking stupid, or being humiliated, or feeling your fear. Take this human and jump.
that's great. And with perfect timing, the next question talks about humiliation. So we'll talk about that. Got a couple more minutes here. So do you have any specific pointers for being with the fear of humiliation, or even resistance to the fear, like trying to deny it?
Yeah, well, actually waking up or living in this way is about courage. It is about living courageously. So if that means that you risk humiliation, so be it. It again comes back to actually the gratitude to life for bringing this humiliation. It's like, keep humiliating me, please, life. That's the prayer. Bring it on. Wherever I might be hiding or standing up on some kind of high tower in some way, show me that actually I'm not that, and I'm not that, and I'm not that. Even if it means that life shoves my face into the dirt again and again. And there can be fear, and there can be all kinds of uncomfortable sensations. But if you keep seeing it as a gift, in fact, it doesn't necessarily feel like a gift, I understand, but it is, because it cracks you open and open and open to life. And that's what you're truly longing for. And so instead of trying to protect this me from humiliation, it's a surrender, it's an offering up on the altar of truth, of this me again and again and again. Here, take it. Here, just take it again and again.
Great. We're getting some other comments about gratitude, and I want to express that to you as well. Thank you so much. In closing, is there anything that you want to talk about that you have coming up? We have the profile so people can find out more information about you, but any events, books, anything that you want to announce at the end? Promote yourself, I guess, is the...
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's see. Okay, I have 3 books. 2 have been published. 1 is in the process of being published, so not published yet. And I have a retreat in Portugal, which I'm really fingers crossed hoping is going to happen, is in October, the 10th to the 17th of October, so coming up quite soon, and there are still places. And if it doesn't happen for whatever reason, you get full refund, so there's no worry about that. But there are still places if people want to join. I do regular webinars every Sunday morning, so also tomorrow morning, although they'll all be watching the Nothing conference. But in case they are not, there's a webinar tomorrow morning, European time at 11. And what else? I don't know. There's all kinds of things on my website. I can't remember.
That's perfect. Yeah, just
that's enough.
Go to the website. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. For everyone, we'll go ahead and stop the webinar and see you in about 15 minutes. But UNMANI, have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.